This is very interesting to me, all this stuff and Peikoff, and if they're not valid, then the concepts aren't valid, and you can't, if you, it's, to me, it all relates to this idea of presupposing, like, you have to presuppose a consciousness for there to be perception. Well, no, actually, I don't have to presuppose anything. I can be a little baby and presuppose nothing, and I have perception. So what you're really talking about is, as I analyze it, I have to think there's something like consciousness involved with it. But we're getting the cart before the horse. Nothing has to exist before. Let's just think what really happens. What happens? I get perceptions, perceptions. They keep coming. Perceptions, 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 perceptions. And I look at them. Now, it is true that consciousness seems to be a part of that. But it's not that it has to pre-exist. It's defined from. I'm looking at perceptions. I'm saying, listen, how could I explain perceptions? Well, looks like, okay, there's a thing called strictly a perception, but that's not the whole story. There's also this processing of perception. Okay, that's my mind processes perception. There's this consciousness. There's this fact that I know about the perception. And that counts because sometimes perceptions that I have leave my consciousness, but then they come back later, and maybe I'll remember I had them before, so I know there's a quality there that sometimes it's a conscious thing, sometimes not. So we'll call that my conscience. We're breaking down perception. You could break it down differently. What if you said, okay, with perception, there's a datum, and the datum is recorded, and there's a justifier. There's a datum, there's a thing that records it, and there's something that justifies what it saw. That's another way to do it. Now you might say, well, the recorder is the consciousness, or the half recorder and half data. You could break it down differently if you wanted to. Now, I believe in consciousness. I believe in will. Will. So I think the will, no matter how you break it down, what I call the will be part of that. In other words, the will is a real phenomena. Maybe it should be the thing that has identity, or maybe it's made of parts, or maybe really there's two different things that half and half make this phenomena will that I falsely identified in the sense that there's another way to think about it. We always want to say, well, we have to have had this first. We needed definitive physics first. We didn't need anything first. Just stream of perceptions. We understand nothing. We see color. We don't even know that's our mother. No, it's just a big bunch of blobs. But it's pretty because we do have our built-in preconceptions. Now, the other thing you said is that this is the real where we dip for a lot and where the objectivist position takes a huge toll on you. This idea that the senses are raw. There's no interpretation. Listen, there's unconscious thought going on. A lot of it. Very complex, high order. It's not raw. It's not raw. You're not getting photon by photon. And first of all, in your eyes, all the cones and rods, all the nerves coming from the back of your retina, they go to the optic nerve where they join together. Not all the information reaches the brain. It's already been processed and collated together, compressed into the brain's equivalent of JPEG or some other sort of compression understanding system with less lines. Okay? But there's a more important example. One I think you'll have to think interesting at least, Mr. Cropper, if not yield to it entirely. And admit that there is some important, significant, not minor, not just a wordplay, but actually significant interpretation of the kind you're saying should exist in senses. And the issue is basically this. I have here a pen. I think it's fair to say that I perceive this pen as a 3D object that I'm holding in my hands. It looks three-dimensional. I can see which part is further away, closer, and so on. Okay. But I also know human physiology. And I know, through my perceptions, that each of these eyes takes a two-dimensional picture. But I don't think it's fair to say that I perceive this as that my senses, what I understand as my senses, like before I understand all this physiology, just as a human animal, how do I sense? I sense this as one 3D thing. I don't sense this as two-dimensional pictures that I need to think about to interpret. And yet it is an interpretation. To take two pictures and use the parallax and the shading to get 3D information as a kind of interpretation. And it's a kind of interpretation our eyes do. And probably to a certain degree, our ears also collate this binary information to get sort of higher dimensional information, 3D information. And it's so useful. We don't really. Some animals, look, chameleons can separate their eyes. They look, oh, I see two pictures, looking around. Oh, there's a bug. And then they can go into focus mode. That's the cool thing. They go into focus mode and they get a 3D picture. It looks like, and they need the depth perception. They can go back and forth. I've always thought it was funny. We don't have the ability to skip that. It's very hard. You can close one eye like this. But if you try to look at something and just get two pictures, even if you cross your eyes, no, they're still overlapped. What the hell? Why can't you separate and just have two pictures if you want? I mean, maybe I want to look at the game and watch the pot boil. I don't know. You can't separate it. There's definitely interpretation. Now, it's a sound interpretation. The kind of interpretations are sound, but they're not perfect. And that's the whole point about that. Whoever was saying about if you push that. The point is, the senses are affected by the conditions, the temperatures, and all these things. And they're distorted in the sense that the interpretations changes by these in ways we don't want it to change in our rational. You know what I mean? Our rational or material, let's say natural philosophy reasoning, we want to say the water is some degree temperature. If I put my hand in, it feels warm, and I put my hand in, it feels cold, and it's because of the temperature of my hand, I want to say the water temperature is the same. I want to get something consistent, right? So that's really what we're looking for, is these consistencies. And the way we do it is by understanding our interpretation. So, okay, well, I might have a coughing fit now, so I better go. All right, cheers.